Welcome to the first podcast episode of All Snake No Lake. I'm Arthur Machado here for WSUM, and I'm here with Joseph Flores from Temporex. Just to start off, could you
Thank you for
introduce
having me.
yourself and your musical project on your own words?
Yes. So I'm Joseph. I make music under the name Temporex. I've been making music maybe since 2015, and I released my first album, Care, in 2017, and that went very well. And I kind of realized after I wrote Care that I didn't actually know how to write music. And so I took a few years to teach myself a little bit more about production and music in general. And as a result, I wrote my new album, Bowling, which came out in June.
The Return of the King. I thought it was so funny on how like all of your YouTube comments, that was the one thing that everyone kept saying, like Return of the Prodigal Son, Return of the King. And I agree. Congrats on
I
releasing
didn't actually
Bowling, by the
notice
way.
that.
I think it's so funny. Your fan base
Thank
is really good. They're all very friendly.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
But yeah, congrats on releasing Bowling. It's a really good record. Like it feels so much more sophisticated than Care,
Thank
and
you.
I feel like you can really hear how much your sound has evolved since then.
That means a lot. I appreciate it.
I can hear a lot of different influences that weren't present in Care. Like it's not just lo-fi bedroom pop.
Hmm.
I can definitely hear that you have some like R&B influences, some like 70s like funk influences, and
Definitely.
a lot of 90s. I mean, just the aesthetic, so good. And
Thank you.
yeah, I was wondering how much of the album was still like DIY, like how much of the album still felt like the original production of Care.
I kind of want to say all of it. All of it I did basically by myself. I had one of my friends mix it, and then I hired somebody to master it, and that was the first for me.
Hmm.
And on top of that, everything was pretty similar. Like I wrote everything in the same room. I wrote Karen. I used, or actually, I don't think I have any of the same gear, but it's all updated gear, updated microphone, and then yeah, it stayed DIY aside from two tracks where I had my mixer Adam come in and help me out with production and like ordering of segments of delayed.
And is that something that you wish to maintain for your next releases? Or do you eventually hope to work with like on a more professional like studio setting with like the more traditional quote unquote sort of way of making music in the industry?
I think I'm kind of ready for anything. Like in whatever way the world wants me to grow, like as long as there's growth, I'm down for it. So if that means in the near future I'm going to be working in my own studio, like professional studio with a engineer and a person to like work Ableton while I'm singing or playing guitar or something like that.
Uh-huh.
That would be awesome. I just want to, like, my goal at the end of the day is to just make the absolute best music that I can with whatever resources I have at that time.
Sounds good. I feel like your sound, it's crazy to me that you've been doing a lot of this just by yourself. Because, I mean, that's crazy. Like a 15-year-old making music in their bedroom is now here charting like every single alternative, becoming such a mainstay of the indie music industry and such like a big name in the bedroom pop genre. And that's crazy that everything can start if you just start off like by yourself, DIY, and now you're here. So yeah,
Yeah.
I feel like the music industry changes a lot, and it's been changing a lot quicker in like the more recent years. Like bedroom pop or lo-fi that was the mainstay like 3 years ago has now been like kind of fading out, while like hyperpop and the pop punk revival have been bringing in. And I wonder, what would you say is your biggest struggle as an artist to remain relevant in this music industry that doesn't stop changing?
I would say the biggest struggle is getting like the rich like figureheads in the industry to care about my music. That's the biggest struggle. Like the fans have cared since day one. Like they're always there for me, and I appreciate that so much. Like I was terrified that nobody was gonna listen to the album when I released it, but the fan base that was super strong at the beginning stuck around and still like streamed this album. But my biggest struggle is getting the I'm not gonna name any names or companies, but like
Not gonna diss anyone.
Yeah, no, just getting this company to like invest in me, like not money, but like give me the space that I feel like I deserve.
And like, how would you define your genre right now? Like, because you clearly have evolved a lot since you started making music, and I wonder, like, how would you define your sound now as it compares to when you first got into the industry?
Well, to start off, I think I would refer to my music genre-wise as computer music.
Hmm.
And that's kind of like an all-encompassing term to just describe the way my music is made. Like everything's virtual. There's very few live elements to it other than maybe vocals and a like bass or like minimal guitar, which I'm trying to change up a little bit with whatever I'm going to do next. But it's all very synthetic and based in my computer. So I'm like, oh, it's computer music. You can make up any assumption you want based off of that one term. And I would classify Care as computer music too, since I just would consider computer music to be such a big subgenre or such a big, vague name, I guess, for music.
Yeah, and essentially, you're right. Like, it all comes from the computer. So I think it's a pretty good way of defining it. I haven't seen it before. And like, as you said, like computer music and how everything is very digital, everything is virtual. Would you say that brings out a lot of challenges when performing live? Like, how would you say that your live performances change from the album? Because I feel like that must be so hard for someone that's so based on like computers, as we said.
The tough thing about that is I've been looking for a band maybe since 2018 and it's never happened and I've never been able to put together a band. So I've always played karaoke style and I always perform karaoke style. And so I don't think, unless I somehow find a band soon, I don't think my performances will change that much. I hope that they will change soon. I really want a band.
I'm excited. Like, I feel like the live instrumentation would make like completely transform your music in a really good way. Just hearing the same tracks with the extra instrumentation sounds super interesting.
Yeah, I think so too.
And going back from live and more about the music like production process, I feel like nostalgia has a big role in how people make music and just how the nostalgia is moving forward as people age. And I mean, you were born in 1999, right?
Yes.
Where does the 90s nostalgia come from? It seems a little bit out of place, but it's just in your aesthetic. Where does all that come from? All the 90s vibes?
It's funny that you ask that because I was just thinking about that myself. I was like, why? I'm born in 99 and I didn't experience any of the 90s. Why am I so drawn to like late 80s and 90s art? And I really have no idea. My one of my hypothesis one of my theories for that is like maybe on TV I only watched the stations that had reruns on it, or
Hmm.
the art I was looking at online was just recycled from the 90s somehow, but I really don't know. It's just like the 90s video game advertisements have always caught my eye.
Those are so good, like the Nintendo Power ones.
Yeah,
Or like the
yeah.
PlayStation 1 Crash, like very tacky. Oh, so good.
Yeah, and I wasn't around for that. Like I did not exist back then, but somehow I'm just so drawn to it.
I think it's a very interesting outtake. Like all your music videos, the album covers, just seeing this like essentially Gen Z musician making all of these references to 80s and 90s pop culture. I mean, I'm the same. I was born in 2001. So and yeah, you started making music on your bedroom, computer music, very DIY. And I feel like you have a very huge fan base online, and a lot of your music initially blew up on like TikTok and Instagram. Like, I feel like you're the definition of a Gen Z musician. And I wonder how you feel about that, like about Gen Z music, and how would you describe it, and how do you feel being a part of this movement?
I personally think that as time goes on, younger and younger people are going to start making music just because the technology and interfaces are going to become so easy to use that like toddlers are going to be making beats pretty soon, I'm sure. So it's like it's exciting, and I'm really glad that there's a bunch of young people like myself that are able to express themselves this way and like make a name for themselves. And the only issue I think I am confronted with, especially this time around, like when I released Bowling, I really want to break out of the internet. Like there's now I've seen a bunch of people my age now saying like, okay, I exist online, but offline I have no presence. Like my goal now is to exist in the real world and not just the internet.
And would you define yourself as like a viral musician at first? Because yeah, like when you mentioned breaking out of just the online space, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Just the virality and just how everything goes quickly on social media. Like, how do you plan on breaking out of that?
I have no idea.
Oh God!
But to answer your to answer your first question, I don't know if I consider myself to be a viral artist, because it's like my career, like what made my career was definitely not overnight. Like
Yeah.
Care had been out on SoundCloud for quite some time before I put it on streaming services. So it was everything, looking back now, has always been a really slow and gradual build. So I don't think I would say I'm a viral artist. Like to me, viral is like Pretty Girl by Clairo. Like that song in that video was everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, you do you know what I mean?
No, I feel that. I feel like you existed in the same environment, but it wasn't like the same build up, you know? Like,
Yeah.
because you see Nice Boys or like No Sleep on every single like TikTok songs playlist, and you're definitely there, but I can see where you're coming from. And
Yeah, like for to me, oh sorry, I didn't.
No,
I
go
didn't
for
mean
it. Go for it. Please talk.
Oh, the thing like with me is viral. When I hear viral, I'm like, Olivia Rodrigo's Good For You is unavoidable because it's so viral.
Mhm.
Like I don't think any of my stuff has gotten to that level, but maybe one day, hopefully.
Maybe one day. And I wonder what's your relationship with TikTok, and especially TikTok as a music promotion platform. A lot of this new wave of artists has been getting a lot of like young followers through TikTok and through memes. And how do you feel about social media as like a tool of promotion, like breaking off virality, just like not considering overnight sensations as we mentioned?
Yeah. I think it's great. Like artists that I've seen come out of TikTok, like Pink Pantheress, who is just making stuff that hadn't been made for at least a really long time. Like she's obviously reinventing the genre that she's kind of influenced by and stuff like that. It's like you listen to the music and you're like, no wonder why so many people are loving this. Like TikTok is just the best platform, it seems, right now for getting ideas out in general and having people see them, whether it's one or two or millions and millions.
Another thing that I think is very interesting about TikTok is just how like short it is, and how you see some musicians catering to that. Like they make a point of having like 15 seconds of their track that stands out for TikTok for that purpose. And I think it's interesting that it's like the tables are kind of flipping in how originally TikTok got songs for musicians and now musicians are making songs for TikTok. It's a really interesting environment.
Yeah. It's cool because you're kind of forced to see a lot of things sometimes on TikTok. Sometimes it's like, I don't really want to see this. And other times it's like, I had never seen this one lost cartoon that was a pitch to Cartoon Network that never aired or whatever. Like you find a bunch of great stuff that's just all put in front of your face, and it doesn't take up that much of your mental energy because it's showing 15 seconds of a video or whatever.
And it's automatic. You start and then later it's 30 minutes after you haven't done anything, but now you have all of this knowledge.
I wish it was only 30 minutes for me. I'll end up being on there for like 3 hours.
I mean, it's inspiration.
Yeah.
Just call it work.
Yeah.
Can't wait to hear your song about this one Cartoon Network pilot. And yeah, speaking of Cartoon Network, I feel like the music video for Delayed feels something that I would watch on Adult Swim at 3 a.m. And I mean this as like the highest form of art. I absolutely love it.
I love that.
I want to know what brought you to that aesthetic. because I know we talked about like the 90s cartoons, but I want to hear like specific influences that brought to you to that 80s, 90s aesthetic, because it's great.
Thank you. I'm really glad you like it. And I really wanted to work with Adult Swim on this release, but I don't think I think it's the wrong point in my career. I'm too small for that right now.
I'm
But
surprised I got the Adult Swim right.
yeah, I really I was super interested in working with them. But like talking specific interests or sorry, inspirations behind the delayed video. I know you said aside from 90s advertisements, but 90s media in general is so great. And like the styles that they were kind of confined to at the time because technology wasn't as good as it is right now, they ended up making really good art within like the challenges that they faced with technology. So something specific that I was channeling when I was making that music video was there were like point and click PC games that were used to promote albums at the time. Like Devo had a video game.
I did
Prince
not
had a
know
video
that.
game.
That's amazing.
Yeah. They're not like I love them and they're visually pleasing, but they're not amazing games. They're just really fun to look at and they have environments that are just super fun to explore. So yeah, Devo had one, Prince had one, and David Bowie did. I'm sure a few others did as well.
I know what I'm gonna do as soon as this interview ends. I'm
Yeah,
downloading that Bowie game.
yeah, definitely look it up. The art is really good. So I was like, they're kind of pixelated and grainy looking and super analog. Like they have like a 90s CRTV kind of look. I don't know if that's the right term, but I really liked that about those games. So I tried to replicate that. And within that same style, I'm also really influenced by Pee-wee's Playhouse and just the Pee-wee aesthetic in general, because it's just the best kind of
Pee-wee aesthetic.
yeah. It's just the mix of every single type of art, every genre of art or style of art, I mean. So I kind of put some of that in there. Was very inspired by Tim Burton. Trying to think of some others. There's also some current day influences as well. Have you ever heard of Pilot Red Sun?
I have not. What is Pilot Red Sun?
He makes these crazy videos on YouTube. They're animations in like a very experimental animation style. And they're kind of like absurdist. I feel like from what I've heard you say, I think that you would like them. But I've noticed a few of the people who listen to my music actually like the videos too. And he makes music as well, and it's great. Like everything he does is amazing.
I just saw a little gif of a Rocco that he made from Rocco's Modern Life, and yeah, I think you're right in that I would enjoy this. The other artist that immediately came to mind when I watched that was Jack Stauber and just his animations. And one thing that he did that was interesting to me was how he did that one short for Adult Swim. And I was wondering that if you ever aspire to do anything beyond just a music video, because like coming from a graphic design background and your music, I feel like one, it would be really good, and two, it would be right at your alley. So do you have any aspirations of making like a movie or a short or like a cartoon or something like that just goes beyond music?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of alleys that I really want to explore. It's just like I don't have the resources or the team for it yet. And like cartoons and short films and stuff are definitely some of those things that I want to explore. I like one of my dreams is to make either like a short film or a movie that's kind of in the same lane as Little Shop of Horrors, if you've ever heard of that movie.
Oh yes, love it.
It's a musical, yeah, with puppets and like it's so good. I want to make something like that where it's the visuals are good and the music is good and like listenable outside of the movie.
So like a concept album movie. I love that.
Yeah, maybe one day. There's so much that would cost so much money, so I can't afford that right now, but maybe one day.
And yeah, speaking of money, I saw that you used Blender, like an open source software, and I wonder, like, where does that
Yeah.
come from? Like the animation, that the animator in you, like, was it the same DIY process
Um,
as your music making process?
yes, I did all the animation and video work by myself, and the that kind of evolved from a weird hobby I had. Maybe I think I was like 13 or 14, and there was this animation software called Source Filmmaker, and it used a bunch of assets
Yeah,
from video games
like
like
the
Team
Valve
Fortress
one.
2. Yeah, the it's a Valve animation software, and I
Mhm.
made can I curse in this, by the way?
No, yeah,
Or
you
should
can
I
curse.
hold
This
back?
won't be on like the live broadcast, like FM broadcast. It will be on the website.
Okay,
Go
okay.
for it.
I made like the stupidest fucking videos with that animation software. Like I had Shrek in there, I had a bunch of other weird characters, and I just make them all do stupid shit. And it was very fun. And I learned a lot about animation just because I wanted to be like funny on the internet with videos and stuff. And so yeah, that's where that came from. And I just reapplied all the knowledge I had from Source Filmmaker back into Blender, and
Are you
yeah, that's how
secretly
I made
the
the delay.
mastermind behind Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life?
No, no, I wish.
I wish.
That would be a really funny detail though, like on the Temporex wiki. Oh, he also made this Shrek meme.
And on the topic of meme culture, I wonder if the like how it plays a role on your music and aesthetic. Because looking at bowling and just the overall aesthetics of the album, it's very reminiscent of that meme that was very popular like a year or two ago, like the bowling alley screen memes. You know, is that a
Mhm.
direct influence? Is that where it all comes from?
I did see that. Yeah, I was like really drawn. I it was a like an animation, right? That you're talking about?
Yeah, there are a bunch like just the
Th-
bowling alley screen memes. Very 90s,
Yeah, there
very
was
early
one.
2000s.
Exactly. Yeah, there was this one video by Digilux. I think that's how you say the name. And it was one of those the screen at the bowling alley when you get a strike. It was one of those videos. And I saw that and I was like, this is so cool and so unique. And I want to see people explore like this bowling theme even farther because it was like bowling but super abstract.
Yeah.
And so I that was just stuck in my head. And then as I was writing more songs for the album, I was noticing that like I was seeing bowling pins for the first time in thrift stores and seeing a belt buckle that said I'd rather be bowling on it and like stuff like that,
Please
like
tell me you
weird.
bought that belt buckle.
No, I wish. I
Oh,
wish. I picture though, like I was seeing so much stuff like that, and I was like, this is a sign that I need to explore the absurdist bowling theme even farther with what I'm about to do.
and would you say that bowling is a concept album? Because you have bowling on, like, mentioned on a lot of tracks and just the name of the track and all the aesthetics. Is that something that eventually came to be as you were bringing into those influences? Or is it just more of a coincidence thing?
It kind of was an accident. It was that it came out the way it is, but at the same time, the album really does have like a concept. It's like I knew I wanted to be holding a bowling ball on the cover of the album, and I knew I wanted to create a world around the music just for the music to live in, like to give you something to think about while you're listening to the songs and like associate the songs with
Mhm.
like this whole universe that there is to explore and stuff. So with that being said, as I was writing the album and arranging it in order, I kind of made up a story for the album, like a whole, oh, this is what happens, and then I go here, and then at the end, this happens. Like there's a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah,
And I really want people to make up their own story for it. I'm more curious to hear what other people's interpretations are rather than share my own.
that's exciting. Temporex mythology. It feels a lot like Gorillas, like the Plastic Beach album cover. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
it.
that was a
Just
huge inspiration.
oh, yeah, those aesthetics and just how the world building exists in their world. I think that's interesting that you're bringing that to the table now.
It's
And
really fun to play around with.
I mean, especially if you eventually end up making those like shorts and films and cartoons, this is a very good starting point. Like going back and seeing all this. Bowling is great. I love that album.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am a big fan. I'm nervous here. I'm excited that we're talking now. And the other like realm of influences that I kind of wanted to talk about was video gaming, because like the synthesizers on your tracks feel a lot like they were ripped off like a Nintendo game, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like off the top of my mind, A Long Time feels like a water level song. And
Mm-hmm.
even on Bowling, like you open up a window, definitely has the same vibe as like a Super Mario Sunshine or like a Super Mario Galaxy song. So I wonder if you have any games that particularly stood out to you, like any game that you have a very strong personal connection with.
For this album in particular, I found myself referencing a lot of the Earthbound soundtrack,
Mm-hmm.
because that like the MIDI sounds in that, whatever sounds they chose for that soundtrack just sound so good. Like they're not cheesy default Windows MIDI sounds. You could tell they're curated, and that they spent time picking out like, oh, this is gonna be the piano sound, and it sounds kind of silly, but we want it to be silly because Earthbound's silly. I loved that sound, and they did so much with it too. And like my album's basically a MIDI based album to begin with. So it's like they did it right here. What can I take and apply that? What methods did they do that I can apply to my album to spice it up and like bring it more life, since these are really synthetic tools that I'm using?
It's interesting that you bring up Earthbound. It's one of my favorite games. And yeah, the instrumentation is great. I don't know if you know this fun fact, but they actually had an extra sound chip inside the Earthbound cartridge, and that's why the soundtrack
Oh,
sounds like that.
that's so cool.
And outside of Earthbound, is there any games that to you as a person, Joseph, mean a lot to you? Like any particular memories, any of those like life-changing games?
Well, you did mention how you thought Alone Time sounded like a water level.
Yeah.
And around the time where I was writing Care, I was listening a lot to the Super Mario 64 soundtrack. And
Yes.
I love the water level theme from it's the Dire Docks theme from that game that I love. And just Mario 64 in general will always have like a place in my heart. The art in that game is amazing. I really want 1996 Mario 64 merch. Like I want the shirts, I want the crew neck that they gave out at the holiday party. Like I know, yeah,
That's
like
so specific.
I've done my research and I want it all. Like that game means so much to me, along with Super Mario Galaxy. And like those two Mario games mean a lot to me. And you could hear the Galaxy influence and Care. Like I'm surprised Nintendo hasn't tried to sue me yet.
Better yet, they'll hire you.
Oh, I hope so. That would be sick.
And that's funny how, again, a game that came out before you were even born is such a big influence. It's all we're talking about, just the fascination with 90s and late 80s culture.
Yeah.
And going back to the album, one track is my particular favorite one, which is Plastic Lester, and how that track feels very
Nice.
different from the other ones that you've made. It's a lot, I don't know, it feels very melancholic and serious, contrasted with some more like
Mhm.
quote unquote fun songs. And I'd just like to hear more about that song and just the songwriting process behind it.
That song, I was doing some experimenting. I like we just talked about Earthbound, and there's this one wake up theme in Earthbound that has this really good synthetic guitar part to it. And I learned how to play that on the keys, and I was screwing around with like the chord, and then I ended up making something completely different that turned out to be Plastic Lester, like the guitar at the beginning, or
Mhm.
the fake guitar. And then I decided to take it down like in a completely different direction than I started. I was like, this could somehow become like a MIDI, like alternative rock song in a way. Like
Yes.
just that first segment, if it was played on guitar with like a fuzz pedal on it, it could be like an alternative rock song. And I was like, I want to hear what that sounds like in MIDI form, and I'm gonna sing over it and kind of be like moody. And that's kind of where that came from.
And you mentioned experimentation, and I wonder, are there any realms of music that you still have not explored that you want to go into? Any specific genres, any particular like instruments that you haven't played with that you want to try? Anything that draws you into it, draws your attention into it?
Yes, I really want to write with guitar more. Like I'm trying to start writing just with guitar and then taking it to Ableton and adding some stuff to it just because I want my sound to now evolve into a more organic way while still incorporating like the synthetic elements that I already do. So a lot more guitar, like acoustic guitar. I've been listening to just more guitar music in general ever since I finished the album.
Are there any
And that
particular
started with
artists
Alex.
that stand out?
Yeah, I started with Alex G, and I fell in love with his entire catalog. He's like one of the best songwriters. And then that kind of went in the direction, like that kind of brought me into Elliott Smith.
Mm-hmm.
I love his music. Trying to think of some
So
others.
moody.
I've been re-listening to, yeah, yeah, super moody. I've been re-listening to some Nirvana stuff, but though like Alex G and Elliott Smith are my top two.
That's funny. There's a huge poster of Alex G staring at me right now as we record this interview. Very fitting. Let me show you him. Look at that man there.
Oh man, that is a huge poster.
Right? But yeah, it's exciting just to. Would you still qualify yourself as a producer of computer music in that case?
I think it'll always be computer music because I mean, unless I start to remove the computer aspect entirely and just one day decide to record only on tape, I think it'll always be computer music because just the computer enables me to just do everything by myself. Like I really don't need anything else right now except like that's a lie at the same time. Like I want guitar players and sax players, but I can fill in the gaps that that additional help would leave with just some other elements that I've learned to use in place of them, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Like, computer is always going to be there as a complement, as a backup. And as we're wrapping this up, I wonder, in the short term, what's next for Temporex?
I have some ideas of what kind of music I want to put out and what I want to put it out as far as what format. It's still all an idea. So yeah, I'm trying to start writing again. I'm hoping to get a music video made for one of the songs off of Bowling. And yeah.
Is it still gonna be the same aesthetic?
Yes.
I'm so excited.
My aim for it is to just be like a higher quality production than the delayed video was, because I want to bring on like a director and people that can help me explore like my creativity more, I guess, like in a more professional and clean way.
It's no longer gonna be on the credits of the video, directed, edited, and animated by Joseph Flores.
Well, there'll probably still be a lot of aspects that are done by me, but there will be
true
some extra
Renaissance
names.
man. And if all goes right in Adult Swim exec will see it and pick you up.
That would be like, that's one of my goals, honestly. I want to make that
I
happen.
love that. I have a couple of questions from my Instagram that people wanted me to ask you, if that's okay. They're all pretty quick.
Yeah, of course.
The first one is, what song have you been listening to recently the most?
Let me look at my Spotify. I want to say recently I've been listening to Nathan Bahar. His recent single called Big Body is so good. Yeah, I hope I'm pronouncing his last name right. I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it though. But yeah, that's my go-to song recently.
I'll have to check it out. The next one is, what is the best dish that you cook yourself? Any comfort foods, anything that you make and you're like, yeah, that's good food. I am happy.
Kind of embarrassed to say what it is, honestly, but
please go for it.
It's like I'm not, I don't know, man. Like my fan base is gonna come at me for this, but I'll out myself. So recently for breakfast, I've been making like a quesadilla, but I'll put soy rizo and like a hash brown that's torn up inside of it.
That's so cursed.
It's like it's fucked up, but it's so good though. Like it's good. It's like basically just a potato taco, but like in a quesadilla form. It's
That's
good.
How did you ever like end up with that combination? Did you just look at your shelf and you're like, yeah, that's what I have. That's what I'm gonna cook with.
Not, I mean, kinda. I was like, I want a quesadilla, but I want a hash brown at the same time. And so I just put the hash brown in there and it tasted good.
That's good. That's funny. And last thing here at WSUM, my radio show, it's all about it's called That's So Cringe. It's all about like cringy music, guilty pleasure music, like songs that you're embarrassed to like.
Mhm.
And my question is, what is your musical guilty pleasure?
That's a tough question because a lot of the stuff that's like would be considered cringy, I will like double down on liking it.
Oh,
Something,
that is exactly why I have my show. I have that same attitude. Just like embrace what you like and be proud of it.
yeah, I want to say the what's that soak up the sun by yeah, Soak Up the Sun by Sheryl Crow. That's a good ass song.
And I have to wonder now that you mentioned, what are the other songs that you double down on, like the other artists that everyone thinks are is cringy, and you're like, no, that's great music.
I used to be really against pop music. So, like, I would think that a lot of pop music is super cringy, but I've been realizing there's a lot to appreciate about it. And it can be really enjoyable when it's not being like shoved down your throat. So, I have gotten into Ariana Grande. Like, I love her and I love her music so much, specifically Nasty from I think Positions Deluxe. That song is so good.
Those are two very good responses, Sheryl Crow and Ariana Grande.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming to All Snake, No Lake. It's been a pleasure to have you on. I'm such a big fan, and thank you so much for the chat. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I gotta say, like, out of everybody that's interviewed me, I feel like you understand my art the most.
Oh, that means so much to me. You just
Like,
made my day.
you mentioned like all the you knew the games that I was talking about when I mentioned Source Filmmaker, and you were listing off games that I hadn't mentioned inspired my music. That made my day.
Oh, thank you so much. It's the Gen Z in us.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, thank you. Thank you all for listening in to All Snake No Lake. Thank you, Joseph, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.